What's up, everyone? This is your boy KH Unlimited. Today we are back with episode 13 of Spill the Tearal, which is a podcast where we go over some JRPG news, releases, mechanics, what I've been playing, want to play, and more. And this is episode 13, the big 1-3. There's nothing significant about that. But before we get into the podcast proper, just a few things I want to bring up. The first main thing is, I mentioned this last episode where I was thinking of maybe doing this and I just ended up doing it, is I have created social media for Spill the Tearal. So I created a Twitter account. It is at Spill the Tearal. It is just the name of the podcast. And I'm pretty much using this as kind of like a soft reboot of my Twitter, or X in this case, now what it's called. And I have a Twitter for KH Unlimited, which is just KH_Unlimited. And I mentioned this last episode, but I don't really use it too much because I follow a lot of people there and I get like a lot of stuff which I don't really want to see in terms of like spoilers about games and things like that. So this account, I'm not doing that, so I will go on it more often. And I've already been tweeting like random stuff, like when I finish Final Fantasy 7 Remake, I tweeted it there. I tweet stuff about videos if I'm working on something, etc. So if you care about anything about that, or if you care about this podcast in any way, feel free to follow it. It is Spill the Tearal, SPILLTHETEARAL. Yeah, that is the Twitter account. So yeah, for now, I'm pretty much just tweeting that stuff. I also, like, whenever I tweet, usually I make a YouTube post too. So if you're on YouTube, technically you don't have to follow it, but slowly I'm going to be just mainly tweeting on Spill the Tearal if that gets enough of a following. But yeah, that is the first thing I wanted to mention. And something that I just mentioned during that too is I am finally also done Final Fantasy 7 Remake. If you've been following this podcast for a while now, you've known that I think I've been playing it. I can't remember if I've been playing it during the podcast or even before the podcast started, but the entire plan was, I think, it was before the podcast started, because when I started uploading on this channel again, it was because I started the Final Fantasy 7 Remake Let's Play. The episode 1 was out, then I started this podcast, and the whole point of the Let's Play was that I would be doing it, go through the entire game, and then I could finally play Rebirth. And so I also want to mention that this episode is going to have a very nice, thick, juicy, and chunky segment of what I'm playing, which is a segment where I talk about what I'm playing, because for a while I had not much, and then I had some stuff, but this week I have a lot. I have Final Fantasy 7 Remake, I have the DLC, I've started Rebirth, there's another game I've been playing too, so this segment is going to be probably bigger than usual in this episode. So if you like that part of the show, you're in luck, because I'm going to be talking a lot about that. One more thing that I want to mention is that I may do this, I'm not 100% sure, but I've been thinking about maybe posting a review of the PlayStation Portal on my channel for a few reasons. One is I almost exclusively game on the PS Portal now when I'm gaming on like my personal time. That's because I like mainly gaming on a PS5, and the Portal I think is just like a perfect way to play PS5, because I very rarely have time to actually just sit down and play a game for a few hours. What I'm usually doing is, like, during my morning walk that I do to burn some calories, I'm playing my PS Portal now to play a game. If I ever have like a 15-10 minute break or whatever, I just go pop on my PS Portal and play a game. And that's literally how I played the DLC for Final Fantasy 7, which I'll talk about more after. But yeah, I've used it a lot. I feel like I know it quite well now, so I think it's at this point where I can do a long-term review. I have no idea how long it's been out. I want to say it has to be at least 3 months at this point, so I feel like a long-term review would be pretty good for it, especially because I actually was planning a video for it a long time ago. I already filmed it. I already pretty much edited it too. I just had to do one more pass before uploading it, but I never got to it, which is pretty much my first impressions of the Portal. So what I'm probably going to do is reshoot it with more like developed thoughts and then put that out there, because I do want to try to play around with doing videos that are more like, videography oriented, like using a camera, pointing it at a product, and doing that. I used to do that on this channel like very little. I have like this review I did on a speaker, which I had like a lot of fun making, and funnily enough it did do decently because people were trying to find reviews of that speaker, and people found my video from that. And so like with the PS Portal, I feel like this is something that I do have like a pretty decent opinion on, and I want to make a video on that. So I'll see when I do it, or if I do it, because I do need like a decent amount of time to really make it what I want to. But that is something I want to mention in case you are interested in content like that. It is a type of video which probably isn't for the KH Unlimited audience, but it would be a video where like new people might find it and then come to my channel. But yeah, that is something I want to mention. And before getting to the podcast proper, something that I've been doing is doing a recommendation or something of something I have. And for today, let me turn off the auto track on my camera. I have this As you can see, audio listeners, I'm showing a plain blue book, and if you look at the spine, is where you actually see the name of it. Is it upside down? It's like this, I believe. It is a book of wolf children. It is actually a manga, so let me just flip open so you can see a random page. If you don't know what Wolf Children is, I strongly recommend you watch it or like read it through the manga. It's not a Ghibli film. It's that other, I'm sorry, I can't even think of it. I think it's G Kids. What's that other company that makes films that's not Ghibli, but it's like kind of like it? But Wolf Children is one of those. It is pretty emotional. I remember the first time I watched it, it was like a very sad movie, but then I picked this up and I read it. It wasn't as sad as I remember, which was nice, so I was okay with going through it again. But it's a really good story. If you are interested in it, think of picking it up or watching it. This book usually does have like a paper cover with a beautiful like watercolor cover. I just don't like books that have like the paper cover on it, so I just took it off, which is why I just like a plain blue cover now. But yeah, that is something that I want to recommend in case you're interested. It's called Wolf Children. Specifically, the manga version is called Wolf Children Ame and Yuki, which are the names of the kids, and it is by Mamoru Hosoda, and the art is by Yu. You know, you have a lot of clout when you could just go by the letters YU, and that's all you need to do. And other than that, the last thing I do before I start the podcast proper is pick a random Spirited Away card, and today we have the Seven of Diamonds, and as we see here, it is... What's his name again? Is it No Name or No Face? It's him with like a mini gnome looking dude. And on that note, we will start with the first segment of the podcast, which is what I've been playing. Now, this segment of what I'm playing is me just talking about what I've been playing for the last week. And as I mentioned in the housekeeping section, I have been playing a lot. So what I've been doing more recently is usually when I play like my own games, I just play it and that's all. But what I've been doing is I've been taking notes while I've been playing too, just so like I remember what I played so I can talk about it. So I literally have like a long ass list of notes of what I've been playing, and I'm going to be talking about 4 games, games in quotes, that I've been playing. First is Golden Sun. I'm going to be talking about Final Fantasy VII Remake. I'm going to be talking about Final Fantasy VII Intermission, the DLC. And I'm going to be talking about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So let's quickly just start with Golden Sun. I don't have much to say about this, but I talked about Golden Sun last week because it was the first time I started playing it. Delta, a kind of Game Boy DS and Nintendo emulator on the iPhone, came out recently, and so I got Golden Sun because I know that is a popular JRPG, and I tried it. I loved it. I loved the art. And all I want to mention is that I did progress a bit more into it. I believe I got to the next town. I explored a bit more. I got a new party member. That's pretty much it. There's been nothing significant where I can actually go deep into it, talk about more, but I did want to mention that it is something that I didn't just drop. I have been going more into it. I don't know if I'll be playing it this week, like for the next episode, because I have started Rebirth and I may be mainly focusing on that. But then again, it is on my phone, so if I'm ever want like 5 minutes of gameplay, I may just pull it out and, you know, just play it a bit. So yeah, Golden Sun, I have progressed a bit. The next game I want to talk about is Final Fantasy VII Remake. Obviously, if you want my full thoughts on it, you can just watch my Let's Play, because as I play it, I give my thoughts on it, how I'm feeling about it, how I think it compares to Crisis Core, and how the plot is going and things like that. But I finally finished 7 Remake. The only unfortunate aspect of the Let's Play is, and I don't know if I feel this because I did it as a Let's Play or if it's because like I'm playing through it again, but overall, coming through the game again, I do think the game is unfortunately a lot worse than I remember it being, because when I first played it, I'm like, it had some padding, but overall it was a very good game. It was very good gameplay, very good story, and I even recommended like my brother to play it and things like that. But I remember my brother falling off because he didn't like the amount of padding in it. I'm like, oh, that sucks. And now that I'm playing it again, like, I actually agree with him. I think the game is like, this may be exaggeration, but it's like 70% just padded shit. Like, there's a lot of dungeons, there's a lot of puzzles, there's a lot of stuff I think that doesn't need to be there, and I think all that stuff was there just to make it a longer game, because from my understanding, I didn't play the original Final Fantasy VII, but from my understanding, the part of the original Final Fantasy VII that Remake covers is very short. Like, that's not really that much of the story, and so like what I'm assuming they had to do was try to cram that, or not cram that, the opposite. They had to stretch that into a full game so they could, you know, release it as a full game. And because of that, I think the game itself isn't that satisfying, at least from a gameplay perspective, because I felt like most of the time it was just me going through dungeons and going through puzzles just so I can get like some morsels of story, and that was the entire Let's Play pretty much. But then again, like I mentioned, I'm not sure if I feel like that objectively or I feel like that because it's a Let's Play, because just to kind of like go into it a little bit, when I'm recording the Let's Play, I'm in the unfortunate circumstance where I'm playing in a situation where I'm not the most comfortable. So usually when I play games myself, I either am just like chilling on my chair and playing on my TV over there, or I'm laying down and playing on PlayStation Portal and I'm fully comfortable. But when I'm recording, I am sitting on my chair and I'm at my desk, which isn't the most comfortable. I have to have the mic in front of me. I have to make sure I'm in frame of the camera. And worst of all, I have to make sure my no fan or anything is on in my room. So I have like a bunch of fans. I have a window and things like that. But when I'm recording the Let's Play, I only allow myself to turn one fan on. And what that usually means is when I'm recording, it's really fucking hot. And what that means is I'm usually more irritable when I'm recording. And so when I'm playing on my own, when I have my fans and air conditioning or whatever on, I'm comfortable. I don't really care if things that take that long. But when I'm recording a Let's Play and I'm uncomfortable and I'm sweating and I'm trying to get through the story, it kind of makes sense why I was as annoyed as I was with the game. And so while I do think the game has padding, I do think I was a bit rough on it in the Let's Play. I still think it's a lot worse than I initially thought. I do think there is too much padding going on in Final Fantasy VII Remake, but I don't think it's as bad as I might have made it seem in my Let's Play. So I just want to like clear that up. But other than that, just a few specifics that I want to mention from me finishing it. And of course, starting now, probably to the end of the segment, I'm going to be talking about Final Fantasy VII Remake, the Intermission DLC, and the start of Rebirth. If you don't want to hear any of that due to spoilers, feel free to just skip to the next segment, which will be the new segment? Nope, the JRPG I'm looking forward to segment. So if you don't want any spoilers, feel free to skip forward. And yeah, I'm going to be going into some Final Fantasy VII goodness. So for Final Fantasy VII Remake, throughout the game, during my Let's Play, and I think I even talked about it on this podcast, I kind of talked about how I'm very interested in the timeline shenanigans where I haven't played the original Final Fantasy VII, but I know that this game does kind of deviate from the original Final Fantasy VII, and that becomes more and more clear as you play through the game, where they explicitly state that there's these whispers, these ghosts that are trying to fix fate, and how we're deviating from the destined timeline. And I'm assuming the destined timeline is the original FF7 game, to the point where this is a really cool detail, where in the one of the final fights of the game, you're fighting this big ass thing, which is, I think it's supposed to be pretty much Destiny that you're fighting. And throughout the fight, it would sometimes shoot like these laser beams through the characters' heads, and they would have these quick flashbacks. And again, I didn't play the original Final Fantasy VII, but based on what I was seeing, it looked like CG cutscenes from the PlayStation 1 era. And so what I think the game was doing was it was, showing us the destined timeline in the form of CG cutscenes from the original game, which I thought was really fucking cool, to the point where they even showed like pearls falling on the ground, which I believe is from when Aerith dies in the original. So I thought that was really fucking cool that they did that, and that it kind of confirms that yes, the original FF7 was a destined timeline. And the only like negative aspect I'm saying in quotes, because it's not really the worst, that is that the timeline stuff wasn't really cleared at all at the end, where like there's still a lot of mysteries where the hooded people that have the numbers on their arms, we still have no idea what they are by the end of the game. Sephiroth is still a mystery. I'm still not sure whether he's alive or not, if he's real or what, because at first you think that he's in Cloud's head, but then the other characters can see him, and then there's a scene where you see him on camera, so I'm like, okay, he's real. But then there's a scene where you see Sephiroth, he turns into one of the hooded guys and jumps off a building. So at that point, I'm like, I don't know what the fuck Sephiroth is. I don't know if he's real or not. And so that's still a mystery that's open at the end of the game. And in terms of timelines, that's just very confusing to me by the end of the game, because while I was playing, I was assuming there is a destined timeline, which is the original FF7 game, and there's the altered timeline, which is the remake timeline. But as you get to the end, they start cutting to Zack, who's from Crisis Core, and showing his final battle. And if you played Crisis Core, I'm going to go into spoilers, Zack dies at the end of Crisis Core. And so in this, Zack doesn't die. It shows that he's able to successfully beat the final battle, and he's good, and he starts coming back to Midgar. Now, what's very confusing is they're showing it as if Zack is in their timeline, but if you played Crisis Core, at the end, Zack has Cloud with him, who's, kind of in a coma. And so you have these two weird situations where you have Zack with Cloud, and you have the main gang with, Barrett, Aerith, Tifa, Red, and Cloud. So you have these two groups, and Cloud is in both of them, and so you're like, okay, clearly these aren't two different timelines. And it's kind of confirmed where at the end, when Zack is going to Midgar and the gang is leaving Midgar, they pass each other, but they don't see each other. That's just shown artistically. And so clearly there's like a multiple timeline things happening. I don't know who's in what timeline. I don't know if Zack is in the original FF7 timeline or if he's in a new timeline. I'm assuming he's in a new timeline, because I'm assuming Zack dying in the original Crisis Core is the official, timeline. So like there's a lot of timeline shenanigans happen, and the farther I got into the game's finale, the more confused I got. So in terms of open-endedness, the game is very open-ended. Luckily for me, I don't really mind that. I actually like open-ended stuff because it kind of makes you think about stuff, and especially if there's a sequel, like who cares. But that is something I want to mention in case if you don't like open-ended stuff, you're gonna fucking hate the ending of this game because there's a lot of open-ended stuff. But yeah, that was pretty much the end of the game. And I guess one more thing I want to mention is what's funny is I was really looking forward to the Sephiroth fight because in my mind, I have a specific memory of fighting Sephiroth and it being so fast paced and in being in an environment that was very like colorful and rainbow like. And so that was my memory of the fight. So I was kind of like looking forward to like, oh yeah, what's the fight? Because that's my memory from like whenever the game came out like 4 years ago or whatever. And so we got to the Sephiroth fight, and you fight him in this like rocky area. I'm like, okay, this is cool. But I'm like, where's the environment that was like very colorful? And then it happens. It cuts to them like in space or some shit, and it's fucking beautiful. The background's like rainbowy. And then they start fighting in a cutscene, and that was it. There was no actual fight in the environment, and I was like, oh, so I just misremembered the Sephiroth fight. There is no Sephiroth fight in that space location. It's fully a cutscene, and I think that's why I remembered it as being so fast paced because it was a cutscene, and in cutscene they usually fight faster than you actually can in gameplay. So I thought that was just a little funny thing that happened to me. But those are pretty much my thoughts on the end of Final Fantasy VII Remake. And from there, we go into the Intermission DLC. And what's funny is when I finished 7 Remake, I was fully expecting to talk about that on this podcast and talk about maybe the start of Intermission. But I actually finished Intermission in time for this podcast, and so I'm going to be talking about it in its entirety. In terms of length, I want to say it's like somewhere between 2 to 5 hours, something like that. It did not take long at all. I literally beat it. So the way I played it is like I woke up one morning and I was taking my morning walk, which is like 30 minutes to an hour. While that walk, I was playing it. If I had a 10-15 minute break here and there, I played it. When I was done work, I played it for like another hour and I was done. So like it was very short in a good way. I thought the length was perfect. It was very succinct. There was no, wastage in the gameplay. And that's one of the first things I want to bring up where like I noticed where the original Final Fantasy VII Remake had a lot of padding and bullshit. The DLC had none of that. So one of the small things I noticed is in Final Fantasy VII Remake, very often when you had to like pull a switch or interact with something, you would have to hold triangle for that. In the DLC, you just had to press triangle. They removed the holding triangle. In Final Fantasy VII Remake, if you had to like go around an environment and climb ladders and climb back down, blah, blah, blah. In the DLC, they would have a thing where like if there was like a tower and you had to climb the ladders, if you want to go back down, they would just have like a pole you can slide down the entire way. And they did this pretty often where like they made sure that you didn't have to like, go backwards or retrack your steps that often. You just usually were like flowing through the game, so I like that a lot too. And because it is a DLC, they kind of have the opportunity of not to have that much kind of like fluff and side bullshit. It is literally the entire way is just story. I don't even think there are side quests. I think I didn't really like explore that much, but like I pretty much just did the story to the point where like it's funny because we were in Sector 7, I believe, for a bit, and then when we were leaving Sector 7, our partner, I believe his name is Sonan, he was like, hey, do you want to get prepared and buy potions? And I was like, nah, like I'll just do the mission and come back. But when you leave, you never come back. The mission you go to was like the final mission and the DLC's over, which I thought was funny. But pretty much the plot is you're in Sector 7, you're playing as Yuffie, you have to meet up with Avalanche, you meet up with them. It is not Avalanche in terms of like Barrett and Jesse and Biggs. It is like a different cell, which is kind of like these nicer guys. And you want to pretty much go to Shinra and steal this ultimate materia that you think they have. You go, you do that. What ends up happening is you fight Nero, which is funny enough. I would have no idea who Nero is, but I talked about this in a past episode. But Nero and Weiss are in the ending of Crisis Core, which are these two soldiers who take Genesis' body away. And I googled them at the time, and I found out they're in the DLC. And so you get to fight Nero, which is really cool. He's this really cool fucking guy who's straight jacketed. He has like these blade wings and these weird like dog tentacles where he can kill people. So we beat him. He ends up killing Sonan. Yuffie runs away crying. She sees the plate fall, which in 7 Remake, that moment where the Sector 7 falls, we see that, and Yuffie just leaves Midgar and pretty much kind of states that she wants to create a team, or she wants partners to help her with whatever her goal is, which I'm assuming is going to lead to Rebirth. That's pretty much the entire thing. And so I really enjoyed the DLC. I believe I know Yuffie probably is my favorite to play as in terms of everyone you've got to play as, in terms of playing as Cloud and Tifa and Aerith and Bear and Red, Red and Rebirth. But Yuffie I thought was very fun to play because she felt like she had more stuff she could do. So instead of just like pressing square to like fight with your shuriken, she could press square to fight with the shuriken. If you held it, you would hit them and you could like back off. You can press triangle to throw your shuriken, and while your shuriken's thrown, you can keep pressing square to do jutsus. You can use abilities to change the elements of your jutsus. It was really freaking fleshed out and enjoyable, to the point where I'm like, this feels like a different game. This feels like a better Cloud. And I'm like, once I unlock Yuffie in Rebirth, I'm probably going to use her a lot because she's really fucking fun to play as. And I enjoyed playing as her like every second I could. And so in terms of combat, I thought the DLC was a lot better. And one thing I noticed right off the bat with the DLC is like pretty much within the first 5 minutes, they tie you into the plot of the main game, which is what I love. So they pretty much showed one of the hooded guys, the ones that have numbers on their arms. And I'm like, ooh, fuck yes, because I want to know who these guys are. Like, it wasn't answered in the first game, and so when they showed that, I was like very happy. And they showed a lot of these guys within the DLC. At first, I feel like the game wanted you to maybe think that they were showing you the same one, but I kept on looking at the shoulder and they were showing you different ones. I just wrote the numbers down here in case it mattered. But first we see number 11, then we see number 20, and then we see number 16, and 16 is saying Genova repeatedly, which is, you know, Sephiroth's mom. And so I thought that was very interesting because I didn't know how they were related to Sephiroth at the time. And then we see 11, they were saying Reunion, which I don't know how that's related. I know Crisis Core Reunion is the name of the game. I don't know if it's related to that. But yeah, and we see 49 saying Reunion. And two things that I noticed. One is I noticed they had a symbol on the back of their coat, which I didn't really notice in the main game. And that symbol, from what I think, I think it's Genova. It looks like a person kind of on a cross, kind of like a Christ-like thing, but I believe it's Genova. I'm gonna guess it's Genova. And since they're also saying Genova, that kind of makes sense. But something else that was also, I believe, revealed in the DLC, I don't think it was said in the main game, but Noya, which is one of the people in the Avalanche kind of cell that you're working with, mentioned that these are people that are pretty much Mako poisoned. They're either like ex-soldiers, or there are people who try to become soldiers, and that's why they're like this. And so I thought that was very interesting because we finally know something about these guys, because I had no idea who the fuck these guys were, why they look kind of like half dead or not. But that was something that was revealed in the DLC. But overall, yeah, I really love the plot. I love that you got to learn a bit more of these hooded guys, and I really like that it was taking place at the same time as events in Final Fantasy VII Remake, and you kind of got to see sides that you didn't. So it pretty much takes place at the exact time where Cloud and the gang were bombing a reactor, and Cloud fell to Aerith, and Barret and Tifa had to come back without him. And so you kind of see a cutscene where Barret and Tifa are back and they're worried about Cloud. They don't know what to do. And as Yuffie, you kind of see sometimes like in the background where like Biggs and Jessie are talking and things like that. And so it's very cool to kind of see Yuffie see them, but they don't know about Yuffie, to the point where like Yuffie and Sonon even mentioned that like maybe this Avalanche group might have been the one that we should have partnered with, because they seem like a bit more extreme and more like Wu-Tai-ish in terms of their goals, whereas the ones that they are partnering with right now, the Avalanche cell, kind of seems a bit too nice. And so I thought that was very interesting. So I'm very curious to see how that leads into Rebirth, because Yuffie clearly knows about them, but they don't know about Yuffie. And so I want to see how that partnership kind of begins to form in Rebirth. But I think that's pretty much it in terms of the Intermission DLC. I don't think there's anything else, because I really love the plot. I kind of talked about that, the gameplay. The music, actually, yeah, the music I thought was really fucking good too. Right off the bat, I really like the music when you're playing as Yuffie in battles. And I think I probably enjoyed it more than the main game. But that is something that I noticed, because in 7 Remake, I don't specifically remember any song that I really liked. If anything, it might have been the opposite. I do remember some songs that I found kind of annoying, where in the DLC, I was like constantly kind of like bobbing my head. I'm like, yo, this is pretty fucking good. I like the music that we're fighting to. And one last thing about the DLC before we move on to the last game is I love how the DLC ended with the long-ass fucking CG cutscene. And the CG cutscene was pretty much what I mentioned, where like Yuffie runs out of the building, sees a plate fall, but then it actually transitions to Cloud, Red, Tifa, Aerith, and Barret leaving Midgar, and then them kind of continuing the journey. So they leave, I believe it just shows them going and them saying they want to get to Calm. And there was a bit more conversation there, which I don't remember. It kind of blends for me with Rebirth, so like I don't remember it specifically. But I really love that they had this very extended CG cutscene, which not only looked nice, but it actually continued the story of 7 Remake. So it kind of feels very worth it for people who want to experience more of 7 Remake, and maybe if someone for some reason didn't like Yuffie or whatever, they got something out of it. So I really like that. But other than that, let's finally get to the last game in this segment, which is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. With Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I definitely did not expect me to be talking about this in this episode of Spill the Tearal, because I didn't think I would start it, but I'm already like 4 to 5 hours in. I literally was playing it right before recording too, when I was taking a break. And so my thoughts on it, I have like straight up an entire page page of notes. I don't know if I'll go over everything. I'll probably like miss some stuff here and there, but yeah, let's just start up. One thing I want to say is I love how Rebirth started. It was like this quick ass almost montage CG cutscene of like the end of Remake, where everyone is fighting Shinra soldiers, Cloud, Barret, and everyone, them escaping on the car and bike, and then them leaving, and that's pretty much how it starts. But then it transitions into Zack, and you see Zack with Cloud coming back to Midgar, him looking around, and you kind of get to see the aftermath of 7 Remake through Zack's perspective. And what's really fucking wild is you're walking around with Zack, he's watching the news, and in the news they're saying like, you know, there was this event on Shinra, and there was this big tornado, which we saw at the end of 7 Remake. But then they show on the news like some bodies or like some victims from the rubble, and you see Barret, you see Tifa, you see Aerith, you see Red, you see their quote-unquote bodies. I don't know if they're dead or not, but you see them out of the rubble being taken on stretchers. And Zack's mind is obviously fucking blown because he sees Aerith there, who he's looking for, and it also blows the minds of the players because we know that the entire gang is right now on the way to Calm. They just left Midgar a while ago, so why are they dead here? And so this was the first, you know, sign. I'm like, okay, Zack is definitely in his own timeline. And what I have to assume from seeing this is that this is a timeline where the gang went to fight I don't know if they fought Sephiroth or what, but they went to fight the final battle without Cloud. One, because Cloud was not seen within, you know, this group of people, and two, Zack is literally holding Cloud while watching that. And I'm still not clear on how the time works, because Zack's time is like 4 or 5 years ago or something, and he somehow time jumped to the present. And this still leads into me thinking that Crisis Core Reunion, I'm not sure if they changed it from the original Crisis Core or not, because I mentioned this in a previous podcast episode, but there's small details in Crisis Core Reunion that I noticed that kind of makes me seem like that's also a separate timeline. One being that when Sephiroth burned down Nibelheim, it was out of nowhere not burned anymore, and Zack commented that like, why does Nibelheim look fine now? And we never get more details on that. And also Zack getting a letter from Aerith at the end saying that 4 years had passed, where Zack was like, what the fuck, since when did 4 years pass? And clearly we see now that he's in the present now. And so I am assuming that Crisis Core Reunion is not the same as the original Crisis Core. I think Crisis Core Reunion is supposed to lead into the 7 Remake timeline. And so I have no confirmation on that. I'm not going to Google it because I don't want spoilers for Rebirth, but that is my working assumption for now. So Zack makes it back to Midgar. He sees all that. And what I find very fucking funny, I don't know why Zack did this, but he goes into Midgar, he sees a woman, gives Cloud to that woman and saying, can you please take care of him? And just runs away to save Aerith. And what's very interesting to me is that the woman he gives it to is a character which I was always curious about. In 7 Remake, there was like this woman, she looks like, I don't know, like young 20s or some shit, or maybe even like 18, and she had like a very specific design where I would think she's important, but she's kind of like a news girl where she tells people news. Now she was only in 7 Remake once, and so I saw her in the cutscene in Rebirth. I'm like, oh, she's here, and Zack gives Cloud to her, so I'm assuming she's gonna be more important for the story and maybe takes care of Cloud, maybe even heals him, I don't fucking know. But yeah, Zack leaves, he goes to find Aerith. You get to play as Zack. It's really fucking cool. You get to go to Aerith. You get to fight as him. And the first thing I want to mention is, first of all, being able to fight as Zack first in Rebirth, I think is fucking legendary. I love that. I love Zack. He's probably my favorite from the 7 Remake universe in terms of character. But more than that, I love the way he fights, and I noticed this right away where he wasn't just using his sword, he was fighting with his Buster Sword, and once in a while he would also like throw punches and kicks while spinning around with the sword. I thought the CQC within the freaking sword attacks was really fucking cool. The sound design was great, and I really loved it. And another detail that I really loved is they really kind of showcase that he is truly a monster. He is a first class soldier, where there's a moment where there's a helicopter, you know, flying above him, kind of like shooting at him, and he straight up just digs out a pole from the ground, those poles that have like a big cement base, spins, throws it at the helicopter, and the helicopter falls down, and he just fucking murdered like a few people there. So I'm like, damn, Zack, you're a fucking monster, bro. Like, not only was he strong enough to do that, but he just like fucking murdered those guys without any remorse. So I thought that was kind of funny that he did that, and he was like kind of like smiling throughout all of it because he's just trying to save Aerith. And you do that fight, you get Aerith back, and what's kind of like, it blew my mind they actually did this, but they did the freaking pearl dropping moment for Aerith, where I'm assuming that's supposed to mean that Aerith is indeed dead, and like probably assumably Tifa and Barret and the others of his timeline are also dead. And so that's kind of like the end of Zack in this game from like what I played, and then it transitions into the main gang in their probably own timeline, I'm expecting. And yeah, they're on their way to Calm. They hitchhike and they get there, and the first entire section of the game I thought was very interesting. and mind-blowing to me, where pretty much they're in calm, and Barrett's like, okay, Cloud, we fought Sephiroth. You've been talking about him. Let's get it straight. Well, who is Sephiroth? Tell us about him. And the first chapter of the game is pretty much just an entire flashback of how Cloud, kind of worked with Sephiroth and how Sephiroth turned evil. Now, the insane, moment here is, and like this is obviously more insane for people who played Crisis Core recently, and for someone who played Crisis Core Reunion recently, it was very weird because the entire first chapter pretty much is 1-to-1 with a chapter in Crisis Core where you as Zack go to Nibelheim with Cloud and Sephiroth to investigate a reactor, and Sephiroth turns evil. That's the mission in Crisis Core Reunion. Whereas in 7 Remake, as part of the flashback, you have a mission with Cloud and Sephiroth and some Shinra soldiers. You go to Nibelheim to investigate a reactor, and Sephiroth turns evil. And throughout the entire mission, you kind of get a sense that in this timeline, there is no Zack. It seems like that Cloud was the one who went with Sephiroth, and Cloud was the one who investigated the reactor and then ended up fighting Sephiroth, and Sephiroth becoming evil was kind of throughout that. And so I thought that was very interesting, but it was very weird because the mission literally starts off with this interaction, which I thought was very interesting, where Cloud is talking to a Shinra guard and kind of like talking and like kind of reassuring him like, hey, I'm sorry that you're motion sick, but I've never been motion sick, so I can't really help you with that. Now, if you've played Crisis Core, this is really fucking weird because Cloud from Crisis Core was motion sick at one point, and that was like a character trait of him. So him saying that he's not motion sick is a clear detail showing us that either one, this flashback is not real, or two, this is a separate timeline. And you kind of go through the flashback, you get to explore Nibelheim, and it is a much more expanded version of the Crisis Core mission. In this, you get to explore Nibelheim, you get to go into all the houses, you get to visit Cloud's mom, you get to go to Tifa's place. Actually getting to the Mach reactor is much more of a trek of scaling a mountain and like cool moments. But some interesting things are, one, I really like the format of how they kind of did this flashback where you're playing, and as you play, you sometimes hear the voices of Cloud and Tifa and Aerith and Barrett, listening to the story that Cloud's saying, where if you go into Tifa's house, Tifa would be like, oh, you went into my house? That's weird. And Cloud's like, yep, I ended up going to your house. And pretty much whatever you do becomes canon of what Cloud did. So I went to Tifa's house, and Tifa thought that was weird. I went into her room. She thought that was very weird. I was just exploring, and I was about to open her closet, and she was like, did you try to open my closet, you fucking weirdo? And so I'm like, okay, I backed off. I went to play her piano, and then they all kind of like joked about how Cloud should not fucking play piano ever again because I just fucking played random notes and left. And so I really like the format where like I was doing this flashback, but at the same time I was getting commentary about the cast from the present and them commenting on anything that I did as being canon of what Cloud actually did. So I thought that was very funny. And so we do that, we go through the motions, we see Cloud's mom, but the interaction with Cloud's mom is probably the first point where it starts getting weird, where you go to Cloud's mom, you hang out with her, you start seeing the flashback you saw in 7 Remake where Cloud's mom is talking about how she wants Cloud to get a girl and like settle down and blah blah blah. But the more you go to the interaction, Cloud starts having those weird headaches, those kind of flashing effects where like it seems like there's some timeline shenanigans going on, and you start to notice that it always happens whenever he thinks about his mom. So as you kind of hang out with your mom, the headache effect starts happening more and more and more, and then it goes black, and Cloud just says, you know what, I don't want to talk about this anymore, and then it just cuts to him outside the house again. So my understanding is there's something with his memory that was fudged there that we don't know. And so I'm going to leave it at that until I'm going to talk about that more later. But yeah, you do that, you leave with Sephiroth and Tifa, you go to the Mach reactor, you do a lot of fucking mountain scaling over like an hour or two and get there. And you pretty much do what you do in Crisis Core, where you go there, Sephiroth finds out he's a descendant of an ancient, he spends some time reading about it, and he pretty much becomes evil. And yeah, Cloud has to face down with him after Sephiroth has stricken down Tifa and Tifa's dad. Well, what's weird is it ends right there. I was fully expecting to fight Sephiroth or even more kill Sephiroth, because even in this timeline, Cloud has mentioned that he has killed Sephiroth or Sephiroth has died, but his memory apparently ends there with him kind of facing off with Sephiroth. And so that ends, and as you play Rebirth, it becomes more and more clear, which I was kind of happy with, was it seems like this entire flashback is fabricated, is not real. Whereas I initially thought that this flashback proved that this is a different timeline from Crisis Core and that Zack doesn't exist. But what was mind-blowing to me is after the flashback, everyone goes to bed, Tifa's talking to Aerith, and Tifa says to Aerith like, hey, by the way, I agreed with what Cloud was saying, but the weird thing was Cloud was never there in that incident. It wasn't him. And I was like, oh, okay, so that means Zack does exist, because originally Zack is the one that's there, and while Cloud is there as a soldier, Tifa didn't know because he never revealed himself to Tifa. And so what Tifa remembers is a version with Zack. And so Zack is real, which I love. And it makes sense too, because in 7 Remake, Aerith also mentions that she loved a soldier a while ago, and that was referring to Zack, obviously. So that means in this timeline, there is Zack, and I've concluded that the entire flashback is just fabricated from Cloud, because there's some weird memory shenanigans that's happening with him. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because he was experimented on or what. But clearly the main plot point is, why the fuck does Cloud now remember what happened properly? He clearly has replaced himself with Zack in the story, to the point where there were many mannerisms and talking points which Zack said in Crisis Core, but Cloud was doing it in the flashback, like the squats that Zack always does. Cloud was doing it. Certain questions that Zack asked, where he asked, like, how can you do magic with materia in Crisis Core? Cloud asked that in this game. Taking care of a Shinra soldier in Crisis Core, Zack took care of Cloud and kind of helped him out. And in this, Cloud is doing the same, but with a nameless Shinra soldier. So it's very weird that Cloud remembered it very exactly as to the original timeline, but he replaced Zack with himself, and he replaced himself with a random nameless Shinra soldier. So pretty much the conclusion is that the entire flashback is fake, and we don't know why, because Tifa has said that it was fabricated. And very quickly it becomes a kind of mystery of the game, where no one knows what happened to Cloud from that mission to the present. Like, 5 years have passed. No one knows where Cloud has been or what he's been doing. And that's kind of a mystery to me too, now that I think about it. Is like, 5 years, what was Cloud doing? And no one knows. And Tifa sometimes asks Cloud, but for some reason Cloud gets very serious, and he's like, I can't tell you. And I don't know why he says that. It seems like a very out of character thing, and like, I don't know why she would know not to just tell her, like, why, like, what happened within the 5 years that he can't tell. And so, yeah, that's clearly a mystery, and I'm assuming this Cloud is either from another timeline, or he is a clone of the original Cloud, seeing as there is a Cloud with Zack too. Maybe this entire story is about clones, because we have 2 Tifas, 2 Aeriths, 2 Bears technically, and so who knows? There could be a lot of conclusions. There's only to speculate on it too much, but that is, something that I noticed. But yeah, that's pretty much in terms of plot what I want to talk about. I have gone a lot further. It is an open world game. I fucking love the open world aspects, but in terms of plot, I just really want to talk about that, because I thought it was very interesting how it has started, and I cannot wait to get further into it, because I'm fucking eating up this timeline shenanigan stuff, to the point where I don't know exactly what the original story was for Final Fantasy VII, because the story that I'm interested in this game is the timeline stuff. So, like, I don't know what the story was in 7. Was the story in 7 just like, hey, we have to chase Sephiroth and kill him? Was that the entire story? Because the main story of 7 Rebirth seems to be the timeline stuff, and what was Cloud doing during those 5 years and things like that. So I don't know how much of that was in the original or not, but yeah, the plot I'm very much enjoying. Just to, touch on some of the gameplay aspects. I love the gameplay. I love fighting as Zack. I love fighting as Sephiroth in the flashback. I like how they've kind of simplified stuff, where like everyone has their square attack, everyone has a unique ability, which is triangle, which for Cloud is a Punisher mode. Everyone has magic. They have like this new, tree system where you can upgrade attacks and synergy moves with other characters. You have, a better party system where you can switch between characters. The game is now open world, so there's like a big ass robust map where you get to explore and fight monsters as you want. Yeah, the map system is way better. If you watch my 7 Remake Let's Play, I complain about the map the entire game because it fucking sucks in 7 Remake. It is like disgustingly bad, where sometimes the mini map isn't even there, where in this, the map is a lot better. Visually it's a lot better. It literally looks like a screenshot from the top of the world. It works a lot better. The minimap is always there. I'm actually able to navigate where I want to pretty easily, so I really enjoy that. And yeah, the combat is good. I think the ATB system, maybe this is placebo, but I think it is better, where I feel like I'm getting the ATB charges a lot faster, so it doesn't feel as annoying as it did in 7 Remake. But yeah, combat wise it is very fun, and gameplay wise it is very fun too. And one last mechanic before moving on is there's also seems to be some kind of like bonding mechanics in the game too, where when I was talking to Tifa and Aerith, they had like this kind of like stoic looking face on top of them, and as you talk with them, if you have certain conversations, you can either make them kind of happy to be with you or like mad, I guess. So there are some kind of bonding mechanics, and they said based on how you interact with people, that will change things in the game. I don't know how heavily that will change certain moments in the game, but I do think that is interesting, because 7 Rebirth definitely feels more like an actual JRPG now, from the bonding mechanics to the open worldness to the combat to the UI, just the way everything seems like. It seems like Rebirth is 7 Remake feels like a demo to Rebirth, if I'm being honest, mechanically and visually and things like that, where going back to 7 Remake, it feels like a tech demo comparatively to Rebirth. And so I'm really loving how Rebirth is feeling, how it's looking. The UI is a lot cleaner. And so I cannot wait to go further into the game. And I'm probably going to be playing Rebirth more today after I record this and edit it and get it up. But yeah, that was pretty much my thoughts on Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth, the Intermission DLC, 7 Remake, and Golden Sun. I've been recording pretty much how long an episode usually kind of is if it was a quick episode. So let's move on to the next segment, which is a JRPG I'm looking forward to. Now, in terms of a JRPG I am looking forward to, I'm getting to the point where it's kind of hard for me to find JRPGs that I'm looking forward to because I don't look forward to that many games, and I kind of really have to scour, JRPGs to see what I'm looking forward to. But this is one that I haven't talked about yet in this segment, and that is Kingdom Hearts: The Missing Link. And that actually is a game that I'm looking forward to, whether you like it or not, the direction that Kingdom Hearts takes with the mobile games. Everything I've seen of Missing Link has been like a positive for me. I've really liked the direction they've been taking, where this is a mobile game, but they've definitely made it more of what people want, to where it seems more like a console experience. Visually, it looks more like a console game. Gameplay wise, it seems to be pretty much taking the combat of console version of Kingdom Hearts, and maybe a bit simply, because it's kind of like a combination of console combat and Unchained Key combat. And I'm just really happy overall that they're going for a more console experience, because at this point it isn't that strange for console level games to be on mobile. It's been like that for years. Genshin Impact is a great example, where it is a full console game, visually, scope wise. It is a fucking massive, beautiful, amazing game, and it's been on mobile since the start. And there are a lot of games of that caliber that are on mobile. Hell, we even have Resident Evil games on mobile now. So like, there really is no excuse for Kingdom Hearts not to be able to do console level stuff on a mobile game. The only excuse would be is if the direction they want to go is kind of more of a simple approach. But I am, more appreciative that they are going for more console level gameplay and visual style in this, which I like. And kind of more about that, I think the visual style in terms of UI and fashion I really like too. I'm really liking the clothing style of the characters. They're wearing these kind of like white almost like sailor uniforms. I don't know like the best way to explain it. They wear these white cloaks. They have these like specific boat looking hats, which I really love the visual style. And I'm assuming this is some kind of uniform in Scala Calum, which is it seems like where this game is taking place. And I actually do have a logline here which I'll read before I move on any further, which is: Kingdom Hearts Missing Link is set several years before the events of the mainline Kingdom Hearts games, but follows Dark Road. The main location of the game is Scala Calum, a metropolitan city built in place of Daybreak Town after its destruction by Maleficent. I like this logline because I straight up don't remember the Maleficent part. I kind of remember that in Unchained Key, but I don't really remember the specifics of that. So I'm happy they mentioned that, because I straight up would have forgotten that. But yeah, it takes place in Scala Calum. I really wanted to explore more of Scala Calum, and I think a lot of people felt the same way in Kingdom Hearts 3, where like you get to be there, you don't get to explore much of it. But at least personally, I think visually it's probably my favorite city or world in Kingdom Hearts, like next to Twilight Town. I really love how it looks, and I really want to explore it. And it's very interesting that it's supposed to be a city that takes place in the past, but it probably seems more futuristic than like what we see like normally in Kingdom Hearts. So that's really dope. In terms of mechanics, you also have the GPS system that they're going to be playing around with. Very interesting to see how that does, because they are using the GPS mechanic like Pokemon Go is, but they're also not enforcing it, which is a good thing. I like that, because I'm not always going to want to go out to play this game. But at the same time, how many people are going to go outside and play it if you can play it at home? So one thing that I'm hoping they do is that you can play at home, but it's kind of slightly gimped. And what I mean by that is, like, I don't know how the GPS mechanic works at all, but I would appreciate if it's something like, say for example, you have to go out and do a mission. If you go out and do the mission, you'll get 100% of the rewards. But if you do it at home and you just move around the analog stick, you might get like 70% of the rewards, for example. Something like that. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but something where like it still does motivate people to go out, because I do appreciate when games do that. It gets people to go out, and like, I'm sure a lot of people remember the craze with Pokemon Go and how amazing that was. And there's a little part of me that's kind of interested to seeing, like, I wonder how big Missing Link would get, because I always underestimate how big Kingdom Hearts is. In my mind and heart, I always still think Kingdom Hearts is the small series and not a lot of people like, but it's not. It's a freaking huge series. It is beloved worldwide, even though it gets a lot of flack from people. And so I'm very curious to see, like, if there is some kind of mandatory aspect to the GPS gameplay, would I realistically see Kingdom Hearts fans outside? Because that would be pretty fucking cool, because I personally don't know anyone who likes Kingdom Hearts. If I've ever mentioned that to anyone, they've usually made fun of it because a lot of people think Kingdom Hearts is kind of goofy and weird. And so like I wonder if like if I was ever playing Missing Link outside, like in my neighborhood, would I straight up see other Kingdom Hearts fans playing? Like that'd be very cool to see. But not only is Kingdom Hearts a lot smaller than Pokemon, so I don't think that would happen, but because it's not a mechanic that you have to do, it's not mandatory, I think it is almost a zero chance that I'd probably see Kingdom Hearts fans playing these in public. So that is a little disappointing, but still, it is kind of cool that there is a chance that if I do ever play this outside, and if there are like Pokestop equivalents in Missing Link, that there is a chance that I might see other Kingdom Hearts fans just playing outside, which is cool. But yeah, that's pretty much all with Missing Link. Trying to think of anything else, but I talked about the visual style, the combat, the plot aspects that may, happen because it is happening in like a specific timeline where we don't know what happens, and it follows Dark Road, which is cool. And so yeah, I'm very curious to see what exactly transpires from this game, because I expect Dark Road, I didn't play it because the gameplay I think was fucking garbage in terms of how much you had to grind, and so I just like YouTube the entire story. I'm hoping we won't have to do this with this game. Hopefully this game is built better where there are more plot advancements throughout the game and it's not just you fucking around and grinding a lot. But yeah, Kingdom Hearts Missing Link is something I'm looking forward to, and I'm really hoping it releases at some point, because I was reading an article and I think it was supposed to originally release like in 2022 or 2023 or something like that, or like the beta was supposed to happen, and it's 2024 and we still have not had a beta in North America. So I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully it comes out soon. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Kingdom Hearts Missing Link, and we will go to the next segment, which is JRPG news that I think is dope. This is a segment where I talk about some JRPG news, and I try to cover big JRPG news and anything that I find interesting. I would say this week there isn't anything huge in terms of news, so I just picked out some items that I thought was personally interesting. And like always, I source all my news stories from Gamatsu, so if you're interested in looking at it yourself, feel free to go there. The first thing that I want to mention really quick is that there was a new trailer for Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, which is a game that I am very much looking forward to, as you probably know if you've listened to previous episodes. And this trailer was a very simple one. It was something that they kind of announced a couple of days before it came out. It came out, I thought it was pretty cool, but like it wasn't like amazing or anything. It was pretty much called the Master and Apprentice trailer, and what they showed in the trailer was they just revealed more characters, which, by the way, side note, I kind of love that they're doing this, where they're releasing trailers every once in a while, and pretty much the point of the trailers is just to reveal like 5 to 10 characters, and they just pretty much fill out the character roster that they end the trailer with. I hope they keep doing that. I really fucking love that. I would even love it if that became like a monthly thing, where monthly they just start revealing characters every month at a certain day, and we just get more characters like that. Hopefully that becomes a thing. But this was the Master and Apprentice trailer, and that's pretty much what we got. We just got different Master and Apprentice characters. So we got, example of some is we got Kid Gohan and Piccolo, we got Krillin and Yamcha with Master Roshi, we got Beerus and Whis, etc. That's pretty much characters like that we got. Just a couple of things that I noticed which are fun. Every time they show a mechanic in the trailer that I used to do in Budokai Tenkaichi 3, I kind of get giddy, and they did that with this, where like there's a small mechanic in Budokai Tenkaichi 3 where like it looks kind of goofy, where if you, I forgot what the button combo is, but if you press a certain buttons when you're getting hit, your character starts dodging every single fucking hit, almost as if he's doing Ultra Instinct, and it's really fucking fast-paced and funny looking. And they did that in this trailer, where like one of the characters just starts dodging like every single hit, so I thought that was very funny. And another thing that they have, which I'm happy they brought back, is that you're able to reflect Ki Blast again, because that was also a thing in Budokai Tenkaichi 3, which I love doing, where like me and my brother would sometimes throw a heavy Ki Blast, and we just used to reflect them and like play like volleyball pretty much in the game. And we saw in this where when Beer shot something at Whis just kind of deflected away. I'm very happy that is a mechanic again. But that's pretty much what they showed in the trailer. It was a very short trailer, nothing very exciting about it in terms of anything other than the characters. But yeah, the next news story is for the game Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance. There was a new trailer release called An Ideal World, and pretty much it was just a trailer showing more of the game, some gameplay and some plot stuff. Like usual, I kind of skimmed through it. I did not watch it fully because, one, I'm not that much interested in the game. It is a game that I know about, but also I just don't like getting plot spoilers. And so I have the logline of the game if you're interested. First of all, this game is like almost like a remake of the original, where they added some stuff on top. So this is what this talks about, where the story is split into 2 main routes, with the player choosing one at the beginning. The canon of creation tells the original story of Shin Megami Tensei 5, while the canon of vengeance follows the scenario for the original, but with significant changes in the middle of later stages of the story. The 2 routes offer completely different endings. In case you're interested in what the plot of the original was, it's set in modern day Tokyo and the netherworld. The protagonist, an ordinary high school student, and his school friends are caught up in a mysterious earthquake and transported to an alternative apocalyptic version of Tokyo amidst an almighty battle between angels and demons. And so that's a plot, and you kind of get a sense of that in the trailer, where it is very like dark looking, but at the same time the designs of the bad guys I like, because they're not like very like gruesome looking or too detailed looking. They're kind of simple, almost Dragon Quest looking, which I thought was a surprise, because this is like, when I look at the art style, I see it as something kind of dark and more mature, but like the bad guy designs I thought were very cartoonish in nature for the most part, which I thought was very cool. But yeah, I don't know anything about this game. I know it's made by Atlas, the same people that make Persona, and so I kind of got a sense of that because it was turn-based gameplay. It was about like collecting demons and recruiting them, which kind of gives me the same vibe of Persona. The gameplay looked fun. I really liked the visual style, where it was almost like it was the same art style of Persona, but it was like way more detailed in the shading. Like everything was shaded very heavily and looked like almost like how CG cutscenes do in like some anime games. And so visually I thought it was cool. I'm not the biggest fan of the art style, where like the eyes are very like fucking distinct of all the characters and it looks very serious, but it is something that does look somewhat interesting to me, so I'm gonna keep an eye on it, and if it's something that I want to try one day, I will, and I will give my thoughts on this podcast. But yeah, there was a new trailer for SMT5 and you can check it out. It's called An Ideal World. The next news story is a game that was announced for PS5 and PC, and it's called Galix New Horizons, or Galix New Horizons, which is a sci-fi game, and it is very much like an anime sci-fi type game where you're playing as like this anime girl, very scantily clad. And I have the logline here, which is: in a distant future where human civilization has crumbled, Earth has become a pristine new world teeming with life. In this open world ARPG, play as a courageous Hayley and set out on a journey filled with mystery and adventure. Begin your own fantastical journey as you chase the unknown. So not the most detailed logline, but I thought it was very interesting that it takes place on Earth, but like it's in the future where civilization has already crumbled, and it's kind of, you're on this kind of new pristine Earth where it's pretty much nature and no civilization. So I thought that aspect was very cool. Looking at the gameplay from the trailer, it reminds me a lot of Honkai Star Rail, at least the start of it, where you're kind of on that ship and it's very sci-fi and you're finding a lot of robots. Same thing in this, you're finding a lot of robots, you're on the ship, but then they do have like this quick montage of different environments where pretty much, as they explained in the logline, you're kind of looking at different environments and biomes on Earth, where like some places have like grass, some places have like purple looking plants or red plants, etc. So I thought that was very nice looking. Yeah, it had real-time combat. It was like everyone's using these lightsaber weapons. It's very sci-fi. They mentioned specifically that you get to choose between close and long-range weapons. There's character customization. They were showing the character and kind of changing into different skins and things like that. But yeah, that's pretty much what it seems like, an anime-style game that is very sci-fi focused. Galix, or Galix New Horizons, coming out on PS5 and PC. And the final thing that I want to talk about very quickly is Reinatus, a game that I said I was looking forward to, has released a second trailer. At least the trailer that I was looking at, it seems like it's a plot trailer, and the trailer that I was looking at specifically did not have subs. And I didn't really try to hunt for it because, again, I don't really care about plot too much in trailers, so I don't get spoiled. And so I did have like a few notes, but it seemed like it was like 90% plot. They showed like a fuck ton of new characters, where like, or maybe not even new characters, but a lot of characters just so you can see what's going on in the story. They did have some gameplay here and there, but from what I could tell, it did not seem anything entirely new. But one thing that I did notice, that at the end they did tease the date of a new trailer, and we're gonna get another trailer on May 9th, which is like in a week pretty much from today. So yeah, that is something that I thought was worth mentioning. But again, it was mostly a plot trailer and I couldn't understand what they were saying because it was in Japanese. But that pretty much covers all the news that we have for this week, and so we're gonna move on to the next segment, which are JRPGs that are releasing this week. And in this segment where we talk about JRPGs that are releasing this week, I want to mention that the JRPGs that are releasing this week are none. We have 0 JRPGs, which kind of makes sense. Last week was really fucking stacked. There's a lot of JRPGs releasing, and so I guess they stacked them that week and put none here. Usually I source from icecodedisaster.com and rpgsite.net. None of them had any JRPGs from what I could tell for this week, so we're going to move straight on to the next segment, which is a JRPG mechanic or character or theme or trope or whatever that I think is cool. Now, the JRPG mechanic that I want to talk about, which I think is dope, is kind of a mechanic-ish. It is pretty much like where in JRPGs you get to play through a flashback or the past of a character, maybe not even specifically a flashback. And I was inspired to talk about this because of Rebirth, and if you don't want Rebirth spoilers, don't worry, this is not a spoiler. It is literally the first chapter in the game, and I'm just talking about the format of how it's done. And pretty much I was thinking about this, and I was like, you know what? Flashbacks in games are really fucking cool, because flashbacks in other mediums, like if you have a flashback in a TV show or an anime or whatever, depending on how it's done, it can be boring, where like if you're flashbacking to something you already know, it's like very boring because like you've already seen it. Or if you're flashbacking to a new character in a new situation, it can be hit or miss depending on whether you care about that. But in a game, it is automatically already really cool because you get to usually play through the flashback, and that specifically is dope. So in the example with Rebirth, you get to play through a flashback of Cloud doing a mission with Sephiroth, and that in itself is very cool because you're getting to go back to a time that you kind of know about, and you get to play as it. Like, you get to go through the mission and physically play as Cloud during that moment. So I think inherently that's cool because you get to play as it, and the actual content of the mission is very cool too. And you have this example in many games. One example I have, which technically isn't a flashback, but it is playing the passive character, but it's the intro of Final Fantasy 16, where you get to play as Clive as a kid, you get to see Jill as a kid, you get to see Joshua as a kid, and you kind of get to see the kind of conflicts going on at the time and characters at the time, and like what pretty much happens to bring Clive to where he is as an adult. So that's another example where, like, yeah, I fucking love that. And if you didn't have that in the game, it would kind of fucking suck. Like, I feel like that intro flashback, in quotes, in a sense, was very important to show who Clive as a character is, and it's very cool to see like characters like Jill and Joshua, very young too, to see how they were. So that's another example that I really liked. Another example that I have, which, spoiler for Ys 8, if you don't want the spoiler, skip like a minute, okay? But in Ys 8, you have this mechanic where whenever you fall asleep as Adol, you get to play as another character called Dana, and very soon you realize that whenever you play as Dana, it is in the past. That's what was happening. And so I really love that because, first of all, it's a huge fucking twist when you find out that you're playing as Dana in the past. And I like what Ys 8 does specifically, where they actually use it as a gameplay mechanic, where like sometimes you need to do puzzles, and to do those puzzles you have to keep jumping between the past and present to solve those puzzles. So I thought it was very well done there too. But yeah, just overall, like, the more I think about it, flashbacks in games are just done much better than other mediums. Like I said, you get to play through it, and it's really cool when you get to have a flashback specifically of a moment that you know about. So for example, Cloud and Sephiroth in Rebirth, we know they have a history. We know something bad happened between them, but we don't really know the specifics. You can kind of guess what it was, but then when you actually go to the flashback, not only do you get to, watch certain moments, but you actually get to play through the moments that you've known about. Like, you know that like something happens to Tifa, you know that something happens to her dad, you know that Cloud gets to go back to Nibelheim and kind of interact with his mother. You know about that stuff. But the fact that you actually go through and physically play through those moments, I think is very cool. So having a flashback of a random moment is one thing. Having a flashback of a moment you know about, kind of, and get to play through it is another thing, which I think is very cool. And another aspect of flashbacks which is cool is like they also can give you opportunities to play as new characters straight up, kind of like the Ys 8 example that I just gave, where like, yeah, it can give you the opportunities to play as a whole new characters, which again, in a game is very fun. Where in a TV show, if you get a flashback of a new character, it could kind of be like, okay, who is this guy? But in a game, when you get to actually play as them, it is an entire different feeling, in my opinion, where you get to know them in a different level. And a few last things to point out too is also something that I noticed about flashbacks in games, which this could either fall into either side of whether you like this or not. I kind of like this, but when you play a flashback in a game, it is kind of more relaxed than the main gameplay, in terms of you are usually locked down in terms of what you can do. So for example, if you're playing as a main character in the game and then you have a flashback of 5 years ago and you're playing as a main character again, usually the game will not let you edit their loadout because they specifically had some kind of loadout at the time, and so they won't let you change their weapon or change their spells or what have you. And so when a game does that, in a way it is kind of more relaxing. You kind of get through the game more seamlessly, or it flows better, where like you don't have to worry about the kind of nitty gritty of like, oh, let me level up my skill tree, let me see what weapons I have, let me sure that I'm maximized, min-max, blah blah blah. You just get to experience the story, have fun, play the combat, and get to the flashback in a much more smoother way in comparison to when you're in the main game and you have a fight. You got to make sure that you have like a certain number of potions or the magic spells or blah blah blah, where in a flashback is like, nope, what I have is what I had at the time. I know that this will be able to let me get through the game, so I can just play it peacefully or in a more relaxed way. So I really enjoy that. And one last thing is specifically in Rebirth, which I really love, and this is the first time I've seen this happen in a game, which I really appreciated in Rebirth, the flashback. What was very cool is the flashback is pretty much happening because Cloud is telling a story to Barrett, Aerith, Tifa, and Red. And what's funny is as you're going through the flashback, you will hear them comment on certain things because he is telling the story. So if you go into a certain location, one character would be like, oh, you went into that location, that's weird. Or like if you do a certain thing, they'll be like, okay, that's weird that you did that. Like they're very specifically commenting on things you did, which is one, funny because they can comment on anything you're doing, and it's kind of implied that Cloud is telling them about these moments. But two, what's funny is you as a player pretty much have full agency over the canon of the character. So if you do something really fucking weird in a flashback, canonically it means that he did that because this is a moment that already happened. So I thought that was very funny that Rebirth had those moments and kind of showed a new side of flashbacks that I hadn't seen in games before. But that's pretty much all my thoughts on flashbacks and JRPGs, and I just found out that I really liked them, especially through Rebirth. So yeah, if you guys have any experience with flashbacks in games too, let me know down in the comments below. But from here we'll move on to the last segment, which is the JRPG casual top list. So the JRPG casual top list is the final segment, which is very quick, very easy, very breezy, where I pretty much go through a top list casually. And this one will be very quick because it relates very hard with the last segment, and it's pretty much going to be my top flashbacks in JRPGs, because I kind of was thinking about like ranking them. I'm like, which one do I like best, etc, etc. And so I have my top 3 right here. I'm going to give them right off the bat and then like speak a bit about them. So at number 3, I have Final Fantasy 16 with this intro as Clive. At number 2, I have Ys 8 with Adol and Donna, and at number 1, I have Rebirth. Now with number 3, Final Fantasy 16, I just thought it was very good in terms of building up character. It really gives you a good idea of who Clive is, of who Joshua is, who Jill is. You kind of get a sense of like what's happening in terms of the story, what are the political conflicts and things like that. And I think it was just like a very good intro to a game, and so I really appreciated seeing that. I really appreciated seeing like the more brighter side of Clive, because as an adult he seems a bit more jaded, whereas here he's a bit more peppy and a bit more open. So that was kind of appreciated too, seeing that side. At number 2, we have Ys 8. Again, Ys 8 spoilers, skip a minute. No, skip like 30 seconds if you don't hear this. But Adol, Donna, when you play as Donna, it is taking place in the past, and so I kind of consider that a flashback, and the way they, use that in terms of gameplay is very cool. That's all I'll say on that, because I literally just talked about it. And at number 1, we have Rebirth. Again, I just started playing Rebirth, but that entire first chapter being a flashback, and as I mentioned, them doing funny things where, like, if you do things, the characters will comment on it in the present. You can canonically do very weird things. There is a moment which I found very funny where, like, I went to Tifa's house as Cloud just to see like if I could find her or her dad or something, and Tifa commented like, "You went into my house, Cloud? That's weird." And Cloud's like, "Yeah, I was just looking for you." And they're talking about that in the present as you're playing as the past. And then I was going through a house and I just went to a room to find her, and then she's like, "You went to my room, Cloud? What the hell are you doing?" And so like I'm just playing a game, so I'm just like examining everything, and so like there was like a closet and I was about to open it, and then Tifa's like, "You went through my clothes," and I'm like, okay, this is a lot more important than I thought, so I just did not look through the closet. But it was very funny because I chose not to check a closet, and then like Aerith and Tifa were very disappointed in Cloud, and Bear was like, "Come on, Cloud, you're better than that." So I thought that was very funny that they were commenting on certain aspects, and like you're pretty much creating these character moments for Cloud. There's a moment where you play piano. I played it like a fucking dumbass, and then they all pretty much commented like, "Yeah, don't do that ever again. You did not have to touch the piano." So I just thought that the way they did the flashback in Rebirth was very new for me, and it was funny in a lot of ways too. And hopefully it's done. If it's done more in Rebirth, I'd like that too. Like I kind of like that entire mechanic where everyone is doing commentary as I was playing, and if it's done in other games like this too, I would actually really like that. But yeah, that's pretty much my top list, where number 3 is Final Fantasy 16, number 2 is Ys 8, and number 1 is Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth. And from there we have gotten to the end of episode 13 of Spill the Tearal. I am very winded because I was trying to not make this episode too long. I don't know how it's gonna be the edited version, but at least like in the raw recording, the what I've been playing section ended at like the 40-minute mark, which is a lot longer than usual. It usually ends like around the 20s, maybe 30s longest. And so like I want to make sure that the rest of the podcast wasn't too long and I got through it without too much fluff. And it seems like I pretty much ended at like normal recording time, maybe slightly longer than usual. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed episode 13 of Spill the Tearal. Like I mentioned at the top of the episode, I do have a Twitter/X account now, which is at Spill the Tearal. It is literally the name of the podcast. If you are interested in following updates from me or care about the channel in that way, please follow me on Twitter. I'd appreciate that. If you are new to the channel, consider subscribing. If you have a comment on anything that I said in this episode, feel free to leave it down in the YouTube comments down below. If you don't want to see my face and you just want to listen to this as an audio podcast, I am on pretty much on every audio podcast service from what I know. So just search Spill the Tearal, or if you're watching on YouTube, check the description and I should have links for a lot of audio services where Spill the Tearal is on. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Hopefully you enjoyed episode 13 of Spill the Tearal. Hopefully you are back for episode 14. I'll see you next week. Peace.